Hi, I'm Jim Larimore, the Chief Officer for Equity and Learning at Riiid, an artificial intelligence and education startup where the three I's in our name signify our focus on removing inequality, inconvenience, and inconsistency in educational opportunity. I'm here today to speak with you about equity and the changing workforce. And the big question I'd like you to keep in mind is whether you believe the college promise glass is half empty or half full as we address the complex challenges of today and as we anticipate the implications of other changes that seem to be approaching us at high speed from multiple points on the horizon, all at the same time. Well, I started with a question, is the glass half empty or half full? I also want to start this presentation with a declarative statement using a quote from the author William Gibson. The future is already here. It's just not widely distributed yet. As a longtime student affairs educator, one-time grant maker at the Gates Foundation, and lifelong advocate for equity, to me, Gibson's statement is an equity statement, and it raises some important questions. If the future is here but not widely distributed or widely available yet, why not? Who gets crack at the new stuff? And what factors will drive access to it? Wealth? Some notion of merit? Greatest need? What are the implications of who gets the first crack at the new stuff? And what's the opportunity cost to individuals and societies when there is unequal access to the new stuff? Over the next few minutes, I want to share some information with you and ask you to reflect on the importance of the work you're doing with the College Promise movement in this moment of such profound change in the worlds of education and work. And I want to encourage you to declare yourselves as equity advocates and equity engineers in advancing this important work. It won't surprise you that there are disparities in educational opportunities and outcomes across every region of the world. In some Asian countries, competition for college admissions has created an overheated demand for expensive private schools, private tutoring, and private test prep. This contributes to epidemic levels of stress, anxiety, and risk of suicide. In the US, inequalities that are hardwired into our pre-K, K-12, and post-secondary systems constrain social mobility and stunt economic growth. In Africa and Latin America, more than half of all children and adolescents are not meeting minimum proficiency standards in reading and mathematics. And the pandemic has made matters worse. UNESCO reported that 1.5 billion students worldwide lost school time due to the pandemic, and you've no doubt seen the impact where you live. As a result, many students are not being fully prepared to successfully enter and participate in a highly complex, rapidly changing global economy. Is the glass half empty or half full? 2020 has been a year of global health and economic shocks, and there's more to come. Technology continues to transform tasks, jobs, and skills. The shift to work from home and learn from home has accelerated the pace of technology adoption at work and in education, but it has also exposed the digital divide as a critical national issue. But is the glass half empty or is it half full? Consider these two data points from the World Economic Forum. 43% of businesses surveyed plan to reduce their workforce due to technology integration, while 34% plan to expand their workforce due to technology integration. And it's estimated that 85 million jobs may be displaced by a shift in the division of labor between humans and machines by 2025. But 97 million new roles may be created that are more adapted to the new division of labor between humans, machines, and artificial intelligence algorithms. The question is, how can we future-proof the American workforce, especially for those already at greatest risk of being left behind? Companies estimate that 40% of workers will need to be reskilled in the next 6 months or less as technology transforms the way that we work. And it's not just technical skills, but so-called soft skills or SEL skills that are in demand. And the things that you've been telling people for years about the importance of lifelong learning, it turns out that more and more business leaders agree with you. 2 years ago, in 2018, about 65% of business leaders said that they expected employees to continue to learn and to pick up new skills on the job. Today, 94% of business leaders believe that the ability to continue learning is important. Not surprisingly, Online learning and training is also on the rise, but it looks different for those who are employed than for those who are unemployed. The number of people seeking out opportunities for online learning on their own initiative has seen a fourfold increase in recent years. And there's been a fivefold increase in employer provided online learning opportunities and a ninefold increase in access to online learning through government supported programs. But among the unemployed, there's been great interest in learning digital skills such as data analysis, computer science, and information technology, while those already employed have placed greater emphasis on personal development and strengthening soft skills. Now, we know all too well the barriers and constraints that can interfere with an individual's ability to succeed in education and acquire the other forms of social capital that increase the likelihood of education and career success. Cost and affordability, transportation, childcare, alignment of school and work schedules, and finding time to study, managing the stress of it all. That's why the work of the College Promise campaign and your involvement is so important, because these are not just individual challenges. These are systemic, structural challenges that none of us can solve on our own, but that collectively we can overcome by putting students first, by working collaboratively across sectors to ensure that every student has the resources, wraparound supports, and guidance they need, by realizing that these efforts are an intergenerational reinvestment that propels social mobility and drives innovation and produces a positive ROI to ensure the economic vitality of our nation. And we know what types of institutions are really driving access to education in the US. This image from the Century Foundation's 2018 report on policy strategies for pursuing adequate funding of community colleges should be required reading on Capitol Hill and in every state legislature in the country. The bottom line is clear. Talent drives the economy. The challenge is also clear. In our nation and across the world, talent is pretty evenly distributed. The problem is that opportunity is not. And the place where talent in the bottom half of the family income distribution has the greatest chance to rise is in the community college. So that's where the investment should go. Now, do we have evidence of the economic impact of making national investments in access and student success? Does this type of investment pay a double dividend by driving social mobility and producing national economic returns? Yes, an emphatic yes. I rarely get excited by economic research, but this work by a team of economists from University of Chicago and Stanford puts a bounce in my step. Recognizing that innate human abilities and potential are unlikely to have changed or evolved much over a short period of time, the researchers explored three questions using data from 1960 to 2010. One, were equally talented women and people of color simply not interested in being doctors and lawyers in 1960? Or two, were barriers to education and training inhibiting the match between talent and participation in various professional pursuits in the labor market? And three, what was the impact on economic growth when barriers to a wide range of employment opportunities decreased? The key finding is that reductions in the friction or barriers to a more equitable labor market participation accounted for roughly 40% of growth in the US market gross domestic product per person between 1960 and 2010. If my math is correct, that's roughly $8 trillion of our current $20 trillion gross domestic product. And the investments we made as a nation in the 1960s, the GI Bill, creation of the Pell Grant, dynamic growth and access to post-secondary education, and the passage of the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts. So while it might feel like we're facing a number of unfamiliar challenges, let's be honest. It's the pace and the global scale of innovation that has changed, not the presence of such changes. The 1960s gave us the first video game console, the first computer mouse, the first LED lights and the laser, the Unix operating system, and the precursor to the internet. The 1970s gave us the VCR, the personal computer, the first cell phone, and the first digital camera. These technological advances produced new advantages for the privileged for years before they reached the average person. When the future arrived, it was not evenly distributed, which is why I believe Those of us who are working on innovation in education need to look first at public schools and community colleges when we're thinking about ways that innovation can close gaps in equity, opportunity, and achievement. Because the future is already here. And the great innovators of the next generation are just as likely to be born poor as they are to be born rich. So we need to make sure that the talent that they possess has a clearer, more level, and more guided path to opportunity. And the doorway to that opportunity is found on our community college campuses. I started off by asking you whether you think the college promise glass is half empty or half full. I have to confess that I don't think that's the right question for us to be asking. Instead, I hope that we will ask, what is our strategy to fill the glass and get it to the people who need most to have their thirst quenched? In the years since it was launched, the College Promise campaign has brought together very purposefully a mix of practitioners, researchers, students, policy and civic and nonprofit leaders, employers, influencers, innovators, funders, and others. It has brought together red and blue to create purple. I'm not sure whether to describe the College Promise campaign as a network, a learning community, a collective impact initiative, or something else. So I'll call it what I think it is, a movement that arrived at precisely the moment we needed it. And I'm deeply honored for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you.